Welcome to Rin Behind the Practice. I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist, and I spend a lot of my time in conversation with practitioners, coaches, and healers about the behind the scenes of their businesses. What I started noticing is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and often in isolation. Most practitioners are incredibly skilled at the work they do with their clients, but very few of us were ever taught or trained in how to build a successful startup business. And suddenly, we've been left to figure it out on our own. This podcast exists to bring those conversations forward, the dreams, the uncertainty, the highs and lows, the recalibrations, and the messy middle. My hope is that by normalizing these conversations, we can soften the stigma, feel less alone, and start closing the gaps together. Today's guest is Jo Peck. Jo is an alignment guide who helps people understand how their money is working so they can reduce stress and make more confident decisions. Jo, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for showing up and having this conversation with me today.
Sophie, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Before we look behind the scenes today, can you share with us a little bit more about the work you do?
Of course, yeah. So I'm an alignment coach and a certified quantum human design specialist and a financial freedom mentor. So basically, I help people move from stress and survival mode into clarity and freedom by understanding who they are at their core so that they can create aligned strategies for lasting change. So my work kind of sits at the intersection of energy and strategy. So on the one side, I help people understand themselves on a deeper level by looking at their human design, energy awareness, and mindset work. And that helps them to recognize patterns so that they can break through the limiting beliefs that they have that most of them don't even know they have and start making aligned decisions. But then on the other side of that, I help people reduce one of the biggest sources of stress in their lives, which is money. So I offer practical financial clarity tools that help families, homeowners, business owners to understand exactly where they are financially, how to pay their debt down faster so that they can build wealth and create the freedom that they're looking for without feeling overwhelmed. So that's my rundown.
Do you generally work with people one-on-one?
I do generally work with people one-on-one, but I also have a group called the Becoming Circle where myself and two other coaches kind of do a group coaching.
When people find you to work with you or vice versa, do they generally come to you for a specific thing? Like, is it generally the money and the financial piece? Like, is there one thing that you find people are most attracted to?
So it's funny because most people are attracted to the money. Everybody wants to reduce their debt. Everybody wants to pay their mortgage off sooner, right? But when they come to me, they usually have limiting beliefs that make them feel like that's not possible, like that's too good to be true. And that holds them back from moving forward. So that intersection of the energy and strategy is really where I can help to bridge that gap and help them to understand the beliefs that they have around money are really what's stopping them, and I show them the strategies that we use so that they can see that this is possible.
Where have you in the past or current clients or past clients, where do you generally find that you connect with people that end up becoming clients?
So I do a lot of coffee chats. So I meet a lot of people on social media, all the different aspects. And I try to do coffee chats just to get to know people because not everybody needs this kind of help, but talking to people in all industries, most of my coffee chats are with people in the real estate industry. But in talking to people, it also gives me ideas to be able to help with content, to be able to support them and their clients.
Do you have a connection to the real estate industry?
So I've really just recently started reaching out to people in the industry and booking coffee chats. So I did make a couple of really good connections that have been super supportive and have been helping me to bring in clients.
Really cool. So that's just more of you met someone and it ended up being like a warm pocket for you, but you don't have background, like you didn't work as a realtor.
Yeah, no, I've never worked as a realtor. But what's funny is, and I believe that this happens in life, I've always in the back of my mind thought, oh, you should be in the real estate industry. But it's never really come to fruition. And then now that I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, this kind of connects what I've always thought I should be doing. So it's weird.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
When you look ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, what goals do you have for your work and for your business?
I really, my goal is to help as many people as I can to understand themselves and the beliefs that they have that might be holding them back. And so, really, it's just to make more connections and to support people in knowing that it is possible to make changes. A lot of people think, well, this is the way I am, this is the way I've always been, and I can't change. Well, in human design, what we learn and understand is that we all have a unique energetic pattern that is our map of lessons that we're here to learn. And life gets in the way of those lessons, and we end up getting conditioned and pulled away from who we're supposed to be. And my goal is to really bring themselves back to who they're meant to be. So the more people I can connect with, the more people I can support in that. So really my goal is just to connect with the most amount of people that I can and help as many people as I can.
This is a little bit of a sidebar, but what's the difference between human design and quantum human design?
The only difference between human design and quantum human design is that human design it talks more about the shadow side of your energy, where quantum human design there's wording differences in there too, but quantum human design is based more on the positive aspects to it so that people can see that it's not all the shadow side. You can grow into the gift side. And so quantum human design is really just a more positive way of looking at it.
Cool. Yeah, I love human design for my own personal use. I've never been trained. I'm not certified. I'm not an expert by any means. And I've heard that a few times, and I've never actually gone around to ask someone like, what actually is the difference? I'm a 2/4 projector. I'm splenic authority 2/4 projector. And lots of other things for my chart. So I know a lot about my chart, and now I have children. So now like I'm learning other things about it through learning my children's charts and my partner. And that's like opening up my world a little bit as well. But yeah, human design, such an invaluable tool.
Yeah, it's amazing how much it can tell you about yourself and the way that you've carried yourself throughout your entire life, pretty much.
For sure. So going back now to, your goal of getting more clients, what you said also fundamental to that on the business building side is getting more clients and having more consistent client flow. What do you feel like you need to do to get there, or do you feel like you're guessing?
I definitely feel like I'm guessing. I have a team of people on the financial side that support with that. And we put on a lot of seminars and things like that. Like we have one coming up at the end of this month for just everyday people to learn how to save money. And then we have one in May I think it's May 12th for real estate professionals. So that's super helpful. But in between that, it's really just making connections with people, going into the social media groups and helping people or talking to people and understanding a little bit about what they do and helping them to understand what you do and just making that connection. And other than that, it's literally guessing.
Which for most of us it is. There isn't a clear blueprint or roadmap, or like I say in the intro, like we're less often we get certified in one or multiple. Usually many of us are certified in multiple things. Very rarely do any of those certifications involve anything about the business building side. Then we're certified and we're like, we're so ready and we're so devoted to the work. And then the reality of the business side hits and we're like, wait a second. You and I talked about this briefly before we started. Where are the people? Like, I'm here to help. I'm so ready to help. I'm lit up. I'm inspired. I'm in alignment. Where are the people?
Yeah, 100%. So when I first started this, it was a little bit after COVID, and I worked for corporate for over 21 years. And I just started to feel like it wasn't a good fit anymore. And I had started studying human design, and I don't even think I had gotten certified, or maybe I just gotten certified. And I thought, I'll just quit my job and I'll go do this. Plenty of people need this. And who doesn't want to understand who they are? Well, it definitely did not work that way. So I went for pretty much almost a year with trying to get this business up off the ground by myself, not knowing what to do, not realizing all of the intricate details that go into creating a business. It wasn't just about understanding human design. There were so many aspects to it that I wasn't even aware of. I mean, I had to create content. I had to figure out how am I going to get this content out to people. I had to figure out how am I going to get the clients to me? Like so many of these things that I just didn't think about.
And very few people actually have the accurate distinctions to support us, which is why so many of us are still floundering in our businesses. It's where I was for so many years. I hired the coaches, I did the courses, I did all the
Yep.
things, I did everything. I did all the things people said, do this, try this tactic. What about this? What about LinkedIn? What about this? I did all the things. I invested so much money over
Yep.
those years into things that makes my stomach still feel sick, how much I invested into things that didn't work. And what I realized later on, of course, when I did my deep dive that has me now have the expertise that I have, one of the big things that I realized is that how I was shocked how few people actually have the distinctions and the nuances to understand the differences between small business ownership, for instance, versus startup process. And almost all of us fit into the startup founder category and not small business ownership, but people treat us like we're small business owners. Very small tidbit of the difference. A small business owner is a business that is already validated. So a gas station, a hair salon, a trampoline park, an ice cream parlor. There are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of those businesses already there. There's going to be more open tomorrow. Why is that? It's a proven business model. It works. There's demand for it. You can essentially start that type of business overnight with a little bit of research just to make sure that like you're nailing the demographics and whatever. You can actually take a business plan that's out there that you can find online and run it, right? Like you could franchise it or you can find a business plan. You can essentially start it overnight and start running a business. That's more classic kind of like startup or sorry, small business owner. Most people treat us like we're that, right? So for you, wow, in human design, well, there's a lot of human design people out there. So I should be able to just start this and now my business is going to start working. It actually doesn't work like that for us. We have way more in common with startup founders, which is basically like, I have this thing. Often people don't know that they need this thing. And now what do I do about that? Right. Like, I'm in this lane and I have this thing coming through me. And I fell into this category for a long time in my work. I was certified in lots of different things. And it took me a while to even know exactly what that was. It was like, I have this thing coming through me. I have this I think that's part of what it is to be mission driven and soul led. It's not just like, oh, I want to do this thing. It's not this mental thought that's like, oh, I'm going to just do this for fun. It's like this
Yeah.
thing that comes through us,
Yes.
like it's here and it's coming through. And I don't know if you have children, but it's like birth. You're birthing something, you're stewarding something. Like there's nothing more in common that I've experienced with what it is to be in alignment and like a mission driven, soul led vocational path than it was to have children. And anyway, all that to say, that's just one of the many, many differences and nuances that I learned after trying to figure out why is nothing that I'm doing working. Well, this is one of them. Is like we have this whole startup process that no one is talking about, no one is teaching us. They're giving us advice and tactics and try this and do all that, but it's kind of just like bringing golf gear to play a soccer game. It's like it just doesn't translate. It's not that golf is better or worse than soccer or vice versa. It's just if you bring golf gear to a soccer game, it's going to be very hard to produce the results of soccer. If you bring soccer gear to a golf green, how are you going to produce the results of golf? And that's part of like what we've all ended up in is that. But yeah, everything that you said, I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And you said, at the beginning, you spent so much money trying to get all the things together. I did the same thing. And that's actually one of the reasons how I ended up finding the financial side of what I do, because one of the biggest things I kept hearing from people was their biggest stress was around money. And I know from doing energy work that what you get back is a reflection of you. So I was like, all right, I got to do something. I got to take care of this. And I knew what it was. It was all the money that I had spent trying to get this business off the ground that I was now in debt with. And that's how I ended up with the money side of it because I found a way to help me get out of debt faster. So it all works out the way that it's supposed to. And you're right about that feeling. When you start a business like this, it's an inner knowing. I know this is what I need to do. And that's exactly how it felt when I quit my job. I mean, I loved my job. I worked there for 21 years. I loved it. I just started to feel like it wasn't a good fit. And something was telling me, you got to get out of here. This is not a good fit anymore. So it's so funny how the universe just brings you what you need when you need it and tells you what you should be doing.
I use the phrase a lot, answer the call, because it really happens like that.
Yep.
And sometimes the phone's ringing for a while, and that's okay. But at some point, we answer it. And from the moment that we answer it, nothing is the same after that.
Yeah. And it's like one thing leads you to another, leads you to another, and you just have to trust. You can't think here. You got to think from here and just trust.
So you mentioned some of the things already, but what feels hardest about this building chapter? You mentioned that a lot of it is guessing. You have some things going. I mean, again, we talked about so much, but is there any part that feels hardest about getting things into motion or getting that traction or getting that momentum?
I think the biggest thing would be clients. And when I first started, I was focusing on people who wanted to understand themselves because I wanted to support them through understanding that those limiting beliefs and the thoughts that they had in their head was what was holding them back. But what I found was that so many people were so stuck in their heads and so feeling like this is it, this is just life, that they didn't believe that there was another way. So getting clients at first was really, really tough. And as I've switched my focus a little bit more into the money side of it, it's gotten a little bit easier. And now there's a team behind me to support me. But I would definitely have to say the hardest parts have been just attracting the clients. Once you get them, they see it, it works for them, they love it, they want more. But getting them to believe in themselves enough to believe that you can change those thoughts that you have in your head that are holding you back.
It doesn't surprise me that you started getting some more clients on the business strategy side. It doesn't surprise me that you started getting more clients after the money piece was plugged in, because it gave you a more clear and direct talking point. It gave you a more clear and direct bridge to people. So I could see again on the strategy side why that was a big difference maker for you. And like you just said, so much of the work, and I joke with this a lot with people, it's like, most of us are Merlins doing things backwards. You have human design, you have the money piece, probably some other things either that you formally studied or you've just experienced on your own that make up your kind of holistic toolkit. You'll probably continue to add. But what really matters is, how are we connecting with people? It doesn't matter to them how we solve their problem. They don't care how we do it. And that's often where people get tripped up. In the process of like connecting with who could become clients, and cultivating that community around the work that you're doing and what you have to offer. And you having a really clear, direct thing to talk to people to say, this is exactly what I can help you with. Doesn't surprise me that that was a great way for you to come in. Whether you use human design or not, they don't care about that. They care about the thing that they're suffering with, their major pain point that is causing them major problems, that you're saying, yes, I can give you this dream outcome. I can solve this problem. And they're engaging with you. And then you do your air quotes magic on the inside. That's part of your unique key code. That's part of what makes you good at what you do. But that actually doesn't matter so much to the client before they start working with you.
And I did find that when I first started, that's how I started. I'm a human design reader. You're going to want to know all about you. And people are like, what's human design? What does that mean? So I realized early on, hey, I need to change the way that I'm talking about this to people and help them to understand what it can do for them. Because really, our thoughts, our feelings, our stress, that's all information. And people don't realize that. But when we can start to help them to understand, pay attention to those feelings, pay attention to those thoughts because they mean something, that's where the magic happens.
Absolutely. And yeah. Yeah. I mean, you nailed that and you said it so well. And that's it's a big part. If I was gonna make a phrase for the work that I do with people, one way I would probably describe it is help people translate their brilliance and their gifts into something that other people can understand and get. And what you're saying is like you're already understanding how to do that. Because often what happens, we are so deep in the work and it ironically can create a bigger gap for us to connect with people. We forget really, really, really quickly where we were when we were them.
Yep.
And that's that double-edged sword of becoming an expert and becoming so good at something is it like kind of widens that gap usually from the people that we want to help. And so there is a way and there is a process to work it backwards to connect with them. And what you're saying is that you started noticing that and started doing that work because you realized like, wait a second, I'm saying this, but like people don't get that. How can I reach them? Like, what are they talking about? And where are they right now in their real life? What are their thoughts, their actual thoughts that they're having?
Yeah, exactly. We're so busy, and this is just life, it happens, but we're so busy focusing on everything outside of us that we forget about ourselves. And then when it comes time to ourselves, we don't know what we want. We don't even know who we are. We don't know what any of this means. And then you have somebody, hey, I can help you with whatever. And you're like, I don't even know that I have that problem because I don't know who I really am.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that has felt especially unclear or uncertain in this entrepreneurship, solopreneurship journey for you?
One of the biggest struggles for me is even though I know all about energy, I work with energy, and I know that it's all about mindset. One of the biggest things is, when I get a no and that worthiness, because I have an open will center, which means that I have been conditioned to feel like I'm not worthy. And I have definitely from the time I was born. I had an older brother who was developmentally delayed. So I was always second fiddle. He came for, and I understand why, but as a child, when you go through something like that, you don't understand that the reason behind it. You just think there's something wrong with you. And when you grow up like that and you go through life like that, that's what you believe about yourself. And until you can realize that and get rid of that, but that never goes away. You still feel it. You know in your mind that's not true, but it still feels icky. So I still struggle with that, but I know that this is a life is a journey of lessons that we need to learn. It's growing into our soul, guiding us to everything we need to know, the right people, the right time, the right places. So it's really just a matter of that mindset. And I still struggle with it. I can't imagine that there's anybody out there that doesn't.
I think that is such a thing, absolutely, that we all deal with, especially early on before we have that momentum. And, maybe there's a certain point when, let me add this too, like we are people who are empaths, we're sensitive, we're energetics. That is
Mm-hmm.
one of those things you and I talked about this before we started recording about how all of the business advice that's out there versus like our pocket of the world, there's a lot that's like so different and so opposite and like reversed. And so for me, this being like my area of expertise, when I'm out there and I'm studying and I'm learning and I'm consuming, often I'm doing so much synthesis and translation of the data points and of the principles and the business stuff. But this is one of them. In the rest of the world, personality types that tend to take on entrepreneurship tend to fall usually on like a different part of the spectrum, just for like not to be pointing fingers or calling it has to be this, But for example, like narcissistic or people that are very, their personalities are a certain way, like that. Again, not everyone is like that, but generally there's a certain personality type that's like, I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay, well, this is exactly one of those things that's very, very different for our pocket of the world. All of a sudden, you have energetics, sensitive, empathic people, most of us, not everyone, who choose to be in service to others and inherent in that decision become entrepreneurs. So it's this like opposite way. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
here we are, we're entrepreneurs, we're solopreneurs, but our personality types, not all of us, and we all have different personality types. I'm definitely someone that like could have, run a different business maybe if I wanted to. But you get what I'm saying? It's like it's part of the reality of what we're dealing with. We can hear other people's thoughts. Like we feel things in our bodies. Like that makes the normal day-to-day business stuff, especially in the startup phase, more complicated.
100%. So I am actually very sensitive, and my energy shows that I'm very sensitive. And from the time I was born, my father had a nickname for me. He used to call me wine ass because he said all I did was cry. And that's been a real challenge for me because getting beyond that sensitivity when you're working with people is really not something I can do. It's not like I can work with somebody and separate myself. I'm right there with them, feeling it with them. So I cry in a lot of sessions. I can't help it. It's who I am, right? And that for some people, that's unprofessional, but that's who I am. And I think that's the difference between this kind of a business. And not to say that they're not sensitive and they don't care about people, but it's just a different type of connection.
Absolutely. I love, love, love how you said that. It's part of our superpower is the fact that we are present and in our bodies and in our healing capacity. We have to be able to feel and feel deeply to be
Yeah.
able to do the work that we do. So then we have this dilemma of integrating the healer service provider with the CEO, business owner, marketing person,
Yeah.
salesperson, social media, all of this. Like, what this has come up a few times more recently of like the breakdown of these like split personalities and how that is taking a toll on us as well. We're trying to like have distinctions around that and figure that out, including me, as part of why this podcast exists. Like these conversations are all part of like pulling together distinctions and coming together around this. But like what you just said is so spot on and so real.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge, but yet something I wouldn't give up because that's where the connection is, right? And that's really what brought me to this kind of a business was having gone through a situation or several situations all at once that made me feel more deeply than I've ever felt in my entire life and made me face some things about myself that I never realized. And once I did, it was like this huge awakening. And that's how I got into this. I started studying human design because I wanted to understand who I was and why I felt the way I felt and why I was thinking the thoughts that I was thinking. And I had absolutely no idea that there was even a way to do that. But I just started listening to positive podcasts. That's how I started. And I found through the positive podcasts a woman who was doing a class on manifestation. And I didn't even know what manifestation was. But when I read about it, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll try that. It was mindset stuff. I knew I needed to do something about my mindset. And in that class, she introduced us to human design. And at first, I was like, there is no way I'm ever going to learn that chart. There's so many different intricacies and details to it, but it kept coming back. So I'm like, obviously, God wants me to do something with this. And so that's how I ended up getting involved in that. I needed to understand why I felt so deeply and why nobody around me got that.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's so real, and all of us have ended up doing the work that we do by way of trying to solve our own pain, suffering, confusion.
Yeah.
One of the ways I say it for me is like I was trying to solve my own pain and suffering, but also like make sense of the world and my place in it. And
Yeah.
I felt like I was a good person inside, but I didn't always, my actions didn't always line up with how I felt inside and all of these things, and that's how I ended up in the holistic world. Never intended to be a practitioner, never intended to be a coach, never intended to do it professionally ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 10 certifications in and still wasn't thinking about that. I was just trying to make myself feel better.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. I can totally 100% relate. Even when I started the certification for human design, at first I was like, I just want it for me. But then as I learned it, I'm like, everyone needs to know about this because it really did make me feel better.
absolutely. If you could wave a magic wand and have one thing solved or fixed in your building process, what would it be?
Client attraction, figuring out a better way. Last week I was put in Facebook jail, if you will, just for a day. It wasn't long, thank God. But now I'm afraid to use it. And that's where I make a lot of connections. And I don't know why. I don't know if I did something wrong, I said something wrong, but I usually try to personalize all my messages because that's important to me. That's what I do. I want that connection. So I don't really know why that happened, but it hit me hard. Like, okay, if I got shut off, then what do I do?
Is that your general, like, is your general flow connecting with people and then gets them into like a discovery call or a connection call or something like that, a coffee chat?
Yeah, so what I usually do is, I'll talk with people back and forth online and then I book a coffee chat because I want to get to know them and what their goals are and what their why is. That's really important is the why. That's where it all starts. And then if there's something that I can help them with, we'll go from there. That's typically how, but also the company that I work for, that I'm an agent for the money piece, they have a whole client attraction system. So that's helpful too. But that's separate sides of the business. The other challenge for me is bringing these two pieces of the business together and making that work. I usually either have somebody who wants to understand themselves better or somebody who wants to release their stress around money. So it's sort of separate right now. So bringing that together would really be helpful too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. It's kind of part of when I was talking earlier about the birthing process. Like, there is like how you started with human design, or really you were studying manifestation, and then like we're introduced to human design, and then you got that, and then you were working with that, and then it was like you discovered this other thing, and that is like obviously part of your key code, your unique key code, part of your unique toolbox. Probably it's not over. Like there is some absolute like divine unfoldment to what I like to kind of phrase as like each of our unique key codes. Like, what are those things that we have in our toolboxes that have us have all of the tools that are necessary to, air quotes, nail it with our people, like the people that we are here in this lifetime to serve and help. Like, the way I see it is that we all have a certain pocket, starting in one, not to stay there for forever, but we all have certain people that we are uniquely positioned, our life experience, our life distinctions, what we know. Like we have all of the things that we need to support this specific group of people. And that also is going to correlate to the certain things that light us up and what we choose to get certified in. And some of that, takes time. Like there's a birthing, pregnant thing that goes on of like, I'm pregnant with this thing. And for a long bit of that time, it's like, I don't really even know exactly what that will be. And that's, when you say that you have these two sides and bringing it together, that's part of, how I related and still relate to this process of being the type of air quotes business owner that we are. Like you can't just, you can't just click a switch. It's like, oh, I want to do this. It's like, it's the process.
Yeah. And it's divine timing and divine intervention. We don't have control. We think we do. And that's, a lot of what we learn about through human design too, is I was a control freak. I tried to control everything. And when I couldn't, I thought there was something wrong with me. It's really when we let go and let God that it happens.
I like to use the phrase of stewardship a lot. Like, I think that one of our biggest duties and responsibilities, being in the role that we are, is to be proper stewards of the gifts that we have, the gifts that we're given, the things that we stumble upon and choose to add to our toolboxes. There is something that is, I think that's also inherent in the type of leaders that we are, not being self first, but it's stewardship, just like with parenting and my experience of like being a proper steward of this thing is tending to it and guiding it and caring for it while also not controlling it. You can't make it something, you can't force it, you can't put it in a box, you can't any of those things. Like you're stewarding just like a steward of a natural resource or something would be. It's like you're given the opportunity, you're given the honor and the opportunity to be a steward of this magical thing. And I think that's part of, what you're bringing up here that is so important, of like understanding for us, or finding that relationship to it that puts us in that kind of stewardship dynamic with the gifts that we have.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we didn't share what we have? Human design is fairly new. Being authentic is very new. But if we were out there and sharing it, it's never coming to fruition, right? It's why we were put, one of the reasons we were put on this earth is to help people to understand it's okay to be you. You're perfectly perfect just the way you are.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up today?
Just that I think it's important that people understand that no matter what you think up here, if you just drop down into your heart and think about who are you really, you're going to come up with a different, if you're thinking poorly up here, you're going to come up with a different reason. And that's one of those things that helped me to realize that you are not this person. You think one thing in your head and then in your heart that's not who you are. Why would you say that about yourself? Why would you think that about yourself? And it's not until you make that connection that you realize, and we spend so much time up here and not enough down here. So my one thing that I would say to everyone is just use your heart more than your head when you think about where you're going, what you're doing, who you are, who you want to be, because you could be anybody you want to be. And your mindset can be changed and your heart knows who you really are.
Jo, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, if any part of this resonated, you're in the right place. Please reach out. I want to hear from you. And if you want to reach Jo directly, the links to her website and a Calendly link to connect with her are in the show notes. Thank you again, Jo, and to everyone else, thank you for listening. And we'll see you for the next episode of Ren Behind the Practice.